Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask George after the second test between Pakistan and England, won by 152 runs by Pakistan. We're heading to Rawalpindi for a series decider. Our chief correspondent, George Dobell, is here, the dove whisperer himself. George, were you surprised how quickly things were wrapped up today?
Not really, no. Thought the game was decided a while ago, really. England were clearly going to take it on. I thought they needed a miracle to win. Probably saw that miracle happen in Hyderabad, but no, too much to make up. Spinner's very good, no man in particular. Really good today. Um, no, I wasn't particularly surprised, to be honest. I
Let's
don't
get
think anyone
into.
was, were they?
I think maybe beyond lunch would have been reasonable.
It's just the
And
thing is that the way they play, they're always going to take it on, and it does mean that if it doesn't work, it's going to not work quite quickly, and that's fine. Yeah, so I thought it was broadly what I expected. Maybe I thought they would have got a wee bit closer. I mean, I didn't see Ben Stokes letting go of his bat coming, um, and maybe Joe Root, maybe you would think would last a bit longer, but it was really difficult.
yeah, there is sort of 80s sports car vibe a little bit when you say if it's going to go wrong, it's going to go quickly and it's going to go wrong, and both of those things will happen probably at the same time.
Right.
We're loving that analogy. Let's move on to questions. Um, Danny asks: Pakistan gambled on the pitch, the toss, and their selections. Isn't that exactly what weaker test teams should do, particularly at home?
I don't know. I mean, it's absolutely a legitimate tactic, and I'm a bit irritated that you can't acknowledge that that's what happened, which Shan Masood has said they did, without people saying that that's sort of sour grapes or whatever. Pakistan definitely took a risk. And just to put in perspective, I don't think any time in Test history this has happened before. We've had two tests in a row on the same surface, has it? If it has happened, I haven't found it yet, and it certainly hasn't happened for many, many years. So they did something really unusual. They stacked their side. They only had one seamer, and um, they hoped they'd win the toss. And then from then on, they made good on it. They batted well, they bowled well, fine. But and it worked out. So it's 1-1 in the series, and on we go. Uh, could they have done it a different way? I think Pakistan have the potential to win in more conventional ways without taking such chances. I think there are bowlers who have been available to Pakistan in the fairly recent past who can make a difference on flat wickets. And obviously, Shaheen and co aren't at their best right now, but it's not impossible that they could be in due course. Was it the right thing to do right now? Well, look, it definitely exploits a weakness that England have habitually playing spin, bowling spin, whatever. And that's absolutely fine and sensible to do. But it does seem to me a bit desperate to stake so much on a toying cost. And it's also a bit of a flaw of the sport that can happen. It's not unique to happening in Pakistan. It can happen in England. There was a Lord's Test a few years ago where India were very much on the wrong side of a toss. Can't remember what year. Um, yeah, obviously, in India, the winning the toss can be very important. But we saw England win the toss a lot in that 16 or whatever it was series. Scored big first inning runs, often scored 400. Then Pakistan, India rather would go and score 600 or 700. So there are ways you could take the toss out of it as well. Maybe if England had played better, if Pakistan hadn't played quite as well, it wouldn't have been absolutely decisive. It's not everything, but I think it was disproportionately important, and I would think that Pakistan are better than gambling to that extent all the time. Be really, really interested to see what they do in Rawalpindi. You would think that they should try and produce a turning pitch, but as Shambasood said, he's never seen it turn there. So what do? I mean, literally, do you rake it? Do you make it so that it's almost corrugated? I don't know. I wouldn't be anti it. England can have no complaints. You cannot go to a foreign country and complain about the pitches, within reason anyway. Um, but and England have problems with spin, habitually, as we say. But I don't think that just not watering it for another day or two is going to make a whole lot of difference.
Did the way they approached this test, or how much did the way that this test was approached have to do with the circumstances around it, i.e., the fact that they lost six in a row and they dropped lots of their, let's say, famous players, certainly not informed players, and it was just a case of, well, we might as well just, it was a little bit sort of nuclear, I guess.
Yes,
And
yes, I think that's fair.
how might that actually affect what they do in Rawalpindi? Might they revert to something a bit more regular, i.e., Rawalpindi is reasonably flat there, isn't it? Or might
It's flat
this
as
might be a blueprint?
anything. It is. Rawalpindi is really flat. So what can they do? As I say, I don't think just fiddling with the surface would make a difference at that stage. You'd have to do something quite dramatic. Um, and yeah, I don't think there was agreement in the Pakistan camp before the game on what to do. You're right, they had tried pretty much everything. There was talk of green seamers. We didn't really see them, but we saw pitches which were a bit more helpful for seamers against Bangladesh, and Bangladesh won. We had talk of that in the first test, and we saw Pakistan make a huge score. They bear in mind they scored 450 odd against Bangladesh and lost. Bear in mind they scored 550 odd against England and lost. They've been down other routes. And Shah Massoud, I imagine, was under a huge amount of pressure to keep his job. You can't go on losing like that. And so they gambled. And I say again, I don't think anyone's moaning about them gambling. You were allowed to take risks. But it was a risk. And I don't think we should disingenuously pretend it wasn't. Imagine England. England might have screwed up. Of course they might. Pakistan might have bowled wonderfully. Of course they might. We'll never know for sure. But you suspect, had England won the toss, they'd have just done what Pakistan did. Now, whether their spinners would have been able to exploit Pakistan batting, I don't know. But what did Pakistan score in their second innings? 220? It's not like they got a massive score against England's spinners, is it? And there was there's some drops. So it could have been 60, 70, 80 fewer. But I don't think the drops in the end made a difference. I think the difference was Pakistan batted first, took advantage of the pitch at its best, and then their spinners went to work. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what happens in Rawalpindi, but it set it up. Again, I want to make it really clear. I don't think anyone's complaining. I thought this was a fun game. I thought it was more entertaining for the fact that the bowlers were in it. So, but I'm not an England coach or manager. I don't. It's not my job to make excuses or anything. I'm just saying it how I see it, and how I see it is Pakistan took a risk and it came off. Now, right or wrong, don't care. I'm just saying it as I see it, and if people don't like that, too bad.
We have had a few questions on this, and I can't speak to whether these questions come from sort of England aligned followers, but Ben Rigby asked the question: should this be the last time we see a used pitch in a Test match, except in exceptional circumstances? And another Ben actually asked, why would Pakistan not face any sanctions for this? And how
Well, they
could it
won't
be
fix me saying,
acceptable?
well, okay, may I?
Yeah, go
Sorry,
for it.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no.
Look, there are no ICC regs around pitch preparation specifically demanding a new pit surface. There just aren't. So you can't sanction them for not using a fresh pitch because there's no. The ICC regs, which are typically woolly, say something like the best possible surface. What does that mean?
Yeah,
What does that
nonsense.
mean? And it might well have been a better surface than the surface for the first test, because the first test was such an ill-balanced encounter between bat and ball. So I would argue about the definition of what we mean by best possible surface. But the ICC have not got into that sort of detail about what they demand, so I don't think they can sanction. In terms of should it happen again, well, it hasn't happened before, I don't think, and I don't see it becoming particularly common. But I'm open-minded. I don't think it was. One, it worked, and two, it was fine. I mean, I don't mind the spinners being on top. I think English cricket needs to have a look at its attitude to pitches where spinners are on top. I thought the emotional reaction to Somerset's pitches where they had spin-friendly surfaces was pathetic. I thought, I'd argue strongly that Somerset were doing a service to English cricket by providing those pitches, because then you go to Sri Lanka or India or Pakistan and you are more likely to see those surfaces. Not generally in Pakistan, I accept, but they sure as hell did today. So we've got to be a bit more open-minded about these things, and I don't have a problem with the surface or anything, but I don't think you'll see it happen very often, because I think most sides will back themselves to not need to take such risks. I say again, what do you think would have happened if England had batted first and there was only one seamer in the Pakistan attack and the pitch? That first 5 sessions, really, maybe 4.5, 5 sessions, wasn't a lot of turn, was there? And what was there was wide and slow. Yeah, I don't think there's any need to sanction or talk about changing the regs. Actually, you can change regs in various ways, but I think it was probably a better game and a more fun game to watch than had they played on the original surface they were looking at, 2 or 3 along, where you'd have seen 500 play 700 again or something.
And to that point, like I think that's the most important element of this is the whole the variety part. Like we have had two completely different games. There's no one type of cricket match that I love to watch, and I'll only watch that for the rest of time.
Yeah, right.
It's the variety, it's the difference of matches and the way that they transpire and unfold. That's surely the important part of this.
Absolutely. You don't want a homogenization of surfaces, and that's part of the reason why travelling overseas to watch cricket is such a joy, and one of the reasons why it would be insane for anyone to complain about a country making use of home advantage. I mean, I've always thought that England should use home advantage and the Duke's ball to their favour, and it completely stands to reason that Pakistan would do the same thing here. But I haven't heard anyone sensible complaining about it. Sorry, that's not. I don't mean that rudely. I mean, I haven't heard anyone in a position of authority within England, like I've spoken to Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes, various players. They're not complaining. It's fine. And yes, it's all part of the grand tapestry of cricket that you want variety. And I'm glad that we saw some. Subscribe to The Cricketer for a special offer price of just £1 a month to gain access to all my reports from Pakistan and all the news and analysis from the award-winning cricketer team.
Bobby Smith is going to sign us off for this week with a question. In 1 week, we've seen India bowled out for 46 and England make 823 within a week, maybe. Score and pitch diversity in Test cricket is what makes it so special. Can you explain why some people prefer the 100? I think we can address those two questions quite separately, I think. Feels like we've missed the in-between part there.
To be fair, the 100 is part of that, though, isn't it? It is part of the diversity we want to see, isn't it? Not necessarily whether it's 100 balls, but short format cricket, T20 cricket, whatever. I don't have an issue with the 100 ball format. I never really have. I would have made it 102 or something. I would have made it divisible by 6. I just thought that would have been sensible. But my issue with it has always been the new team identities and the fact that it cannibalizes the rest of the season. I actually couldn't give a toss whether it's 100 balls or not. I'm old enough to have seen 8-ball overs and what have you. We just bloody live with it, yeah? So there's room for all of it. And personally, I'm not one of those people who necessarily thinks that Test cricket's better. I love Test cricket, but I also like T20 cricket and ODI cricket. And I would say about T20 cricket, it's the format of the game that most of us played when we were kids. When you first pick up a bat and a ball, when we finish this video, I'm going to go out in the yard of the hotel and play with the staff and a couple of other journos, and we'll basically play in T20 cricket, yeah? God forbid anyone tries to pat it back for hour upon end. Um, so I think there's actually a purity to T20 cricket. I would argue that. And I like it all. So I think there's space for all of it in the calendar and in our on our TVs or whatever. But that is not my issues with the 100. But yeah, I think he makes a really, really fine point that it's about the diversity and people who moan about different conditions. I don't know. I think they're missing the point. And generally, though, I would say it's a slightly more entertaining game. No, it's a more entertaining game with the bowlers a bit on top. You don't want it to be a lottery. You want it to be a test of skill. So you don't want uneven bounce in particular. I don't think that's very reasonable. If you try and play a ball and it scuttles along the floor, don't think that's great. But if the ball's moving, spinning, swinging, that's a test of skill, and it's a great deal of fun. So plenty of room for variety, plenty of room for surfaces like this. I just don't think we need to overly criticise England. Just in context, I think they got away with less criticism than they should have had at times in India. I thought people were a bit too laissez-faire about, oh, it's tough to go to India and win. But I thought they let India off the hook a couple of times. I mean, it's bloody tough to go to India and win, yeah? Of course it is. But I did think there were a couple of times they had opportunities, Ashwin's off the pitch, Joe Root's in, nail it, nail it. And they went too aggressive. And actually, I don't think they played great against Sri Lanka at the end of the summer either. So, I'm not someone who's afraid of criticising, clearly, but I don't think this is that time. I just think they got on the wrong end of one. They could have played a bit better. Of course they could. Pakistan played well. They didn't play great, but and there are fundamental issues with spin and English cricket. Of course there are. You know that. We all know that. But I think if they'd won the toss, they probably would have won the game. I'm sorry, I do think that. I think the chances were probably 70-30 or something. And therefore I just don't think you can beat up on them that much, because it happens. It's not the end of the world. There doesn't have to be a massive autopsy into every result. Every win doesn't mean they're the best side in the world, and every loss doesn't mean that they're hopeless. This was just, of all the England losses I've ever covered, I've covered a lot, yeah. I can't think of one that I would read less into. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I can't think of one that means that they should just sort of shelve and get on with more.
On that theme, how do you think? I think predicting what Pakistan might do is going to be dictated by the conditions. But what do you think England might do in terms of their 11 for next week?
Well, I think it depends what they turn up and see. You would think that Pakistan are going to try and find a way to make the Rawalpindi surface turn. And you can literally go there and rake it up, and personally I'd have no issues with that. Um, and in which case they'll bring in Rehan Ahmed to bolster the spin attack.
But did they not see a tie pitch and more or less go with the same balance? They could bring both Ben Stokes back, so they did, and then they just traded
Yeah,
out a steamer.
yeah, but I don't think the balance was the problem.
No, what I mean, sorry, is if you're suggesting they'll go there and they'll reflect what they see, well, they went there, saw a used pitch, and the balance was the same.
Yeah, but to be fair to them, you name the side before the toss, and the pitch was fine for the best part of 2 days. As I say, I reckon it was in the sixth session. So 5 sessions in, it's fine. And actually, the balance in England side was fine, really, wasn't it? The England seamers were terrific. I mean, I thought Cast was immense, and Potts too, really. So I don't have an issue with the balance. They got Root Bowl there as well. I'm not sure that I'd bring Rahan in, for what it's worth. I'm just saying that he will come into contention. I mean, for a start, who would you play him instead of?
Exactly.
I mean, Stokes? I mean, that's not going to happen, is it? So I don't know that that's the way to go. It's not as if Shoaib and Leach can't bowl a lot of overs with Root to give support, but it is a 5 days away, I think. So they'll have to have a look at how the seamers are and everything. And but yeah, he'll definitely come into contention if it looks like it's going to turn a lot. For what it's worth, I wouldn't play him if it's going to turn a lot. I don't think you need a leggy on a surface which is going to turn a lot. You need a leggy on a flat surface to unlock where finger spinners maybe can't. But I don't know whether they'll think like that. I'm pretty sure that Raham will come into the equation if they think it's going to, if they think he's going to get the volume of overs. But there's things that the England spinners could learn. The No Man in the second innings was bowling unbelievably slowly. I didn't have the speedometer, but I couldn't believe the loop and the flight he was bowling with and getting huge amounts of turn as a result. And I can't think of a time. You'd have to be going back years to sort of Nick Cook or someone, to a time when an England spinner would bowl that slowly. I mean, anyway, it was. The Pakistan spinners noted that the ball did a lot more from wide, and it did a lot more when you drop the pace. England was slow to realise that, and they can learn from that. So there are all sorts of things that they can learn from. But yeah, it'll be really, really interesting to see what sort of surface we get in Rawalpindi. And to be honest, I hope it does do a bit more.